I'm today going to be talking to you about art and technology and extended reality, as well as AI Web3 and my own practice, and then some of the fears that people have been having, as well as where I see this going in the future. And I think we're at a very exciting time. I'm an optimist in this area, and I hope that you will be too after this presentation. So, does anybody remember seeing Star Wars in this particular scene?
Yeah.
Anybody? Yeah? Okay, so I'm so excited because this, like, we're there, guys. Like, we are going to be holograms popping up, having conversations. I think we're probably, the technology is already there, but we're probably less than 5 years away from this being mainstream. And that is due to a combination of hardware, 5G networks, Web3, AI, extended reality technologies. You don't need to understand all of those things. Maybe briefly, I'll go over those, but I just want you to envision like how incredible that's going to be. You know, like let's say you're working on the other side of the country and you want to have, tea with your mom, or you want to, talk to your grandmother that's in the hospital in isolation. Like this is going to be very, very possible. And we're also going to see this heavily impact, performing arts, music. Maybe somewhat my dream is that we're going to have lots of really eccentric music styles that might have 1,000 or 2,000 fans, and then they can do a concert that's live, and they're going to be live streaming volumetrically, meaning in 3D, right to where you are. So very exciting stuff coming up. This is a video of inside of one of my VR paintings that was up at the Venice Biennial last year at Palazzo Bembo for 7 months. And it's something that I'm really, really passionate about, extended reality technology. So this gives you like a sense of my work. I will be showing a VR headset after all the talks are over, if anybody is interested in seeing the actual full thing. But as a child, I had a lot of health issues and couldn't, do sports like regular, kids my age. And so like art and technology was always my light. And so when I'm thinking about future tech, when I'm thinking about art, I'm always thinking about people who are in situations where they're remote, they're isolated, maybe they don't have, the resources of living in a big city and the access to things like that. So I'm very passionate about art and technology and giving accessibility and opportunities to people who, may not have them due to circumstance. Oh, and also, I have to tell you a quick anecdote about, the first time that I showed my VR painting to in 2018 to a group of Web3 presenters. There were these two guys and they were seeing it in the headset, and one of them says to the other, he's like, wow, like look at this, you can really tell that a human made it. and so I was like, I feel like that with all of these, technologies, I know people get confused. Like I wouldn't call myself an AI artist, I would call myself an artist and musician working with extended reality technologies and future technologies, and there's, elements of that are incorporated into my practice, but I always say like human-led vision first. We're irreplaceable, and that these things are tools for us to use, and that it should always start with human vision first. Okay. All right, so then I'm going to show you like a few examples of more of my art and music to give you a sense of how I've incorporated all these things before we get into some more technical stuff. So here's a still of my art that's inside of the exhibition that I had in Venice last year. So I'm basically incorporating physical, more traditional media with extended reality technology. So there's large oil paintings that have augmented reality triggers from the paintings. There's a VR painting that people can see immersively, as well as the videos. And then the sculptures that you see hanging there, those were actually sculpted in midair and then 3D printed and hung, and then we also have a hologram of a music performance. So I like to joke that my dancers were really tired from nonstop performing for 7 months straight. And so I think one of the things that I've noticed about incorporating, taking traditional media and then using future technologies is that you will get sort of a cross-pollination of interest. So you might have some traditional collectors who now take new media more seriously, and then you might have children who actually stare at a painting longer than 2 seconds because they have something to do with it. They're like, oh, I get to find what moves inside of this, traditional oil painting. So I think it's all really, really exciting. And then I also I know everyone is saying, oh, Web3 is dead, but I'm very still passionate about it, and I think that it is going to be the most accessible base layer for artists getting resale royalty rights, for a lot of the issues that we've heard, even in the film industry, about people not getting paid, things like that. It's their transparency. So we also incorporated that for this exhibition. This is a video of a VR painting. This is currently on display in Cairo, Egypt, so my first exhibition in Egypt. This is as I understand it, collectors that are definitely more traditional, but they're getting more interested in new media. And then I also have a physical 3D printed sculpture that's hanging there as well. So kind of, again, combining this traditional practice with cutting edge. People still like seeing the physical. Let's see. So here's like a still of what it looks like inside the exhibition. So you can kind of see how it's installed. There you go. And so those are just to give you a sense, like I have the headset on, I'm sculpting in the air, and it's 3D printed, and it can exist as a digital collectible, but also be physical in form as well. Great. And then also incorporating music into these practices. I do a lot of live performance. This was at the opening of the exhibition in Venice, and so I loved having augmented reality triggers during the performance, and we actually did the exact same set that was in the hologram. And it was so trippy to have people passing in boats behind us. Like I was like, this is not AI generated. This is what really happened. It was like very surreal, real life. For a note for any performers doing stuff in fine art spaces, I will say it's almost like busking because fine art spaces don't really have any music equipment. So this year I've been focusing a lot more on music because I sort of accidentally signed my first record deal in May. I'm very excited about it with Tom Sarag of Anti-Fragile. So if anybody likes the Velvet Underground, Lou Reed, he worked with him for the last 11 years of his life. So he really gets like the context between art and music. And so when I started making music, it was really more for my virtual reality experiences. And then so this has been an interesting challenge for the last 4 months to be working on music first. It's a little bit more mainstream, and and then creating the VR. There's going to be a full VR visual album to go along with the vinyl album released next year, so I'm very excited about that. But I want to show you another example of how I've been using future technologies with music and art. So this is a VR museum that I built in what people call the metaverse, and one of my favorite virtual worlds because it is Web3 based, so you really own everything that's in there. And then I'm on the left, you can see what I actually look like, which is ridiculous. I have like 2 sets of headphones. I have my real guitar, a real microphone, and then inside of the virtual space, which by the way, if you haven't ever seen, it looks very flat in the image, but like when you're inside of it, it's like being in Ready Player One, if anybody's seen that film. It's very real, like you forget that about your real reality. So I like telling the anecdote of that I actually, when I was doing this performance, I hit my real cheek on my real microphone because I forgot that I had a real microphone. I was looking at the virtual one that was in front of me, which was like slightly ahead of where I was. And so just to give you a sense of like how real it is, and then the people that are there are physically located all over the world, right? Like so that they feel like they're right next to each other and we're all seeing our own emotions. So I think this is really gonna be a big future for us in maybe another 5 years as the hardware gets a bit more accessible. And then we also the headsets they mimic our emotions, so it does feel very, very real. Okay, and then another thing that I'm working on, so this I just did recently as well. It was I was very excited to be the first alternative rock artist to do a featured release with John Legend's Web3 music project. And so basically what that did was gave access to anyone all over the world could get a license to remix the song and then participate in this competition. And the winner was a 16-year-old boy from Taiwan. He beat out professional producers in LA and all over the world. And I am now friends with this person. He's amazing. He cried when he got the prize, which was a VR headset with my art on it. because his parents, his friends, everyone that he knows in person was like, this is a fake competition, you're not that good, you could never be a real producer. He lives in a remote, like, it was like the John Legend's company had to actually pay like an extra $50 to deliver because he lives in such a remote part of Taiwan. So he's just really like out in the middle of nowhere. So this is, again, going back to my original point at the beginning of this, these tools that we're building has the capability of really highlighting people who will not have these opportunities any other way. When we build tools that gives people the ability to be creative and express themselves where they're not limited by geographical location or even physical disability or race or age, like it's not like, oh, you have to be 18, right? Like he's literally a child and be adults in this, right? Like, so I get very, very excited thinking about the inclusion, accessibility, and collaboration that is possible with all of these technologies. So another thing that I've been talking about a lot more recently is working with talking to 4 different AI music companies, because I think that's another way. I really love what Grimes did with her project. We talked about this a couple months ago, and what I did with this one is actually really similar to the reasoning behind why she did that project. So I think that's a great use of AI. And this is just like a still of all the different, so many different amazing remixes. Okay, so then getting into that with AI, I like to talk about, okay, so I want you all to imagine that there's a middle school aged boy, high school aged boy, who goes to a show or he sees this online, and he just becomes really obsessed with Basquiat, right? Does everybody know Basquiat? And then he just like devours all this, like studies it, and then, you know, his mom gets him an art set and then he starts making his own stuff. And everything that he makes looks like it could be a Basquiat, but it's not a copy, right? Like, but he studied it so much, he's just ingested it and he loves it, and now he's creating work that looks just like his, but it's not a copy. So this is exactly what AI does. It studies things and it only makes derivative work. So just like how we're not imagining that this boy is yet ready for his art that would be called derivative, it's not, I mean, he has talent, but it's not going to make it, you know, into a museum. Because it is literally derivative. That's the same thing that AI is doing. And that is why I don't use it in my work unless it's used as a tool. I believe it should be creativity first. We all know what's the worst insult that you could give an artist or a musician or a creative is like, that's so derivative of da-da-da, right? Like, so that is AI's limitation, and that's why I think should never be scared of it being completely, you know, taken away from us in that way. And so to prove this point, this is actually an image that I created with AI in about 2 minutes with a verbal description. And I think that's a great, with an ethically trained image data set. And I think this is a perfect use of how, it's like, I'm not saying like, this is my art, right? Like I'm using it to showcase a point that I'm trying to make. And so I think that that's an example of, I think, a way that you can use it that can be effective. There's many ways it can be effective, but I don't think just having it be a starting point is not the best way. So I want to talk just briefly about what I think makes a great, you know, because I know AI is just the hot topic, so now that we kind of have a little brief understanding of the human side of it, I think that we're at an extremely disruptive time right now where people are either doing things ethically or they are not, and we have to highlight the companies and the people who are doing things the right way. And I think the 3 questions that we all need to be asking ourselves is, for their data sets, is there consent, is there compensation, is there clarity? And if all those 3 things are yes, then, and this is what I ask anybody that I would work with, then I'm like, that is an ethically trained AI data set, and I have no issue with like using that tool set for some reason. But I think this is like an extremely important time for us to be talking about that. So I want to think back briefly about, you know, when the camera first became really mainstream, right? And there were so many portrait artists who could not, you know, they were making their living doing that, and then they stopped getting quite as many commissions to do portraits, right? Now today we still have people who want portraits done. It's not quite as prevalent, but I think this is a comparable shift in what is happening. And my hope is, you know, when we look back at that change, art got so interesting. It got so like introspective and creative and imaginative, and artists really kind of dove more into the human experience. And so that is really my hope for what is happening now, is that we're all going to dive more into what it means to be human, what it means to be a creative. And so this is also the Apple impending Apple headset, which I'm very excited about. So in future thinking, these are the 3 terms which I think I'm very excited to work with anyone who's passionate about all of these things, because if you're an AI company that is not using Web3, that means that they're probably training your data without, with some fine print, and you don't actually own it, and you're giving them permission to use that. If it's a Web3 based AI model, that means that they are giving you literal ownership over whatever you're training, right? Those are 2 questions that I would ask myself. Is if they're doing that, who owns it, and we need to be really conscious of that as well. And then metaverse, I know we haven't heard as much of that. It's not going anywhere. It's definitely happening. Just think about it as the internet in 3D, right? And I mean, when people say, "Oh, the metaverse is dead," I'm like, that's like if Microsoft changed its name to the net in the 90s, and then we were like, in 1998, we were like, "Oh, I don't think this is happening because not everybody has email addresses yet. I don't know if this internet thing is going to work out." We're not there yet, but it's very exciting. It's definitely happening. We're still early days. Okay, and then I just want to again say Web3 solves so many issues. I mean, even the issues I was hearing about with the screenwriters and film producers in terms of transparency with payments, all those other things. So don't think that is dead or over. There's definitely been a lot of bad actors in these sectors, and there needs to be more guardrails in terms of that. So in conclusion, I would like to just have a call to action that right now we really think about elevating companies who are doing things ethically in all of the kind of the ways that I've outlined, and think about what is ethical for you. And since this is a very industry disruptive time, it's a very important time for entertainment, art, and music at large. How can we support and elevate the human spirit and human creativity? And so there we go. So thank you guys so much. If you want to connect with me, here's my. And then my WhatsApp channel over there, if you'd like to keep up with me on there. And then we have time for a question.
Can you just tell us what Web3 is?
Oh, yes. Okay, so when you hear the term, so Web3 is blockchain. When you hear, it's kind of the more overarching term for decentralization, which means not needing a bank or a global, it's a decentralized, and it's sort of the Web3 dream is that musicians, artists, people own their own intellectual property, they own their own data, and there's complete transparency. It solves a lot of the problems that we're even talking about in the film industry as well, that if, let's say that there was a contract for a film, and the actors make this much, and and then everything is transparent and automatic. So if you're getting paid, no one is accidentally not paying you those residuals that you're owed, and it happens immediately. Nobody's accidentally holding something for 6 months from you because they you don't have to audit them because So it would solve all those issues. It also solves the issues, a lot of issues I think that are going to happen with AI. Let's say that someone is training, you consented to train your voice, and then people are using that. Then you can, with Web3 technology, it would be traceable that is your voice. If somebody is using it, you will be compensated. You own that. And it's a way for an actor or an artist, you could be making money while you sleep with your data set of your own voice, and you own it. But if anybody's trying to do that is not using Web3, there's no way for you to track it. There's no way for you to really truly own that. And so that's why I really am pushing for, if an AI startup, I ask them, are you using Web3? And if they're no, then I'm not interested. I'm not interested. It's because we need to really, at this point, we have to fight as artists and consumers to stand up for the future of creativity, and for us to be compensated for our talent and our creativity.
Thank you so much.
Okay, that was really cool. Okay, all right, thank you guys so much.